school teacher, and I left in my 20s quite disillusioned with the education system, to be quite honest. I was a targeted graduate from university, which meant I was in the top 10% of the state, and one of the lucky ones that got a job straight away into the school system. And as soon as I got in, I realised that it wasn't what I expected, even in my 20s. That's a whole other conversation, but yeah, I did eventually leave to start my own business in events and entertainment. I'm also a mum and a wife and a model. Business person. Yes,
you've been a cheerleader. You were in the Elvis movie too for a short little.
Yes, yep. So COVID actually did a good thing and sent me back to films and modelling and editorial.
So when we met at this Freedom Rally, with a mutual friend, and then I'd become aware that it was divide and conquer, because I'd been in the US and then I came here, and you could see that they'd smashed and used the same routine around the world. So somebody was orchestrating the governments to do what they were doing. There was a playbook. So I thought, we've got to if something happens in Australia, nobody cares. I mean, they care, but it's like, Aussies, you know. But if it happens in the US, the whole world listens. Everybody hates America, but everybody copies America. So I think what happened with Melissa and I is we decided that, I sort of reached out to Melissa and said, look, we need a face that we can put on for the truckers in Hagerstown that's going to be a voice for Australia, because we're wanting to get Australia grafted, and New Zealand grafted onto the US freedom movement. Kind of worked.
It did grow some legs.
We got on the stage. I mean, the
whole movement did.
The whole movement, not us personally, we were here, but but they talked about us from the stage. They read the emails from us from the stage. Brian Brzee, and met a lot of people from the Canadian movement, which we were still in contact with. And actually, from that too, we ended up doing they did play a recording in San Francisco.
Did they?
At one of the protests.
That's good.
But it was, so we went to Melissa flew down, and from there we went to the US Embassy, and a convoy that was sort of roaming around. They came along.
Post-epic, post the big rally.
Post the big rally. And we did a bit of a hoorah event outside the US Embassy, which got stacked out with police.
That was crazy.
And it was good. Really, it was just thanking the Americans, saying we need you, and we do. The Americans, I believe that's where we're at in the world. They're trying to break America to break all of us.
It was an interesting take that I feel like wasn't touched on so much with the other rallies. So it was interesting to be involved in that. But I'll never forget when the convoy sort of left the Gold Coast, and that feeling that I got. I just felt so betrayed by our constitution in the last few months. I'd been told in those months leading up to it, the mandates came in, wasn't allowed to go to the restaurants. I was told that I may not be able to watch my daughter's end of year concert, and that got steam rolling. And I just think, the individual rights that our constitution is based on, I mean, without individual rights, we don't have a democratic society at all. That's the foundation. And I think that's been a pull for a lot of people that wouldn't otherwise stand up. I always see myself as, I've also come from quite a religious background. I've always been the black sheep of the family, and I guess looking back, quite a critical thinker even at a young age, and just...
You were made for this.
I feel that there was a calling, but on the flip side, I always was like to make sure I was following rules and government rules, even though I liked to challenge certain things and think about that. When I saw human rights being stepped on and people being oppressed, and the way it was in our society, and those basic things, as I said, it's the foundation.
The freedom of choice. Coercion that we all had to suffer, right?
It's the foundation to a democratic society. Without individual rights and, what our constitution is based on, really, we don't have a democratic society.
we were talking a bit in the car about religion.
Yeah.
And we probably should touch on that some more, because I was thinking about it. We were talking in the car how a lot of the people that are die-hard religion,
Yeah.
it's another system, and it's no different to the government system. And
No.
I believe they actually take verses out of context in the Bible, and they say things like, the one they use is, the Bible says to obey those in authority over you.
Yeah.
And so
This
they,
is how I've been brought up.
and they use that to whip people, but then they don't. If you want to go with that, then you say, well, okay, well then what about the mark of the beast?
Yeah.
Because which is everyone's talking about, this is where it's going.
Right. It's
And I say, well,
revelation.
okay, so if you're going to take that line of thought,
Yeah.
then you need to take the mark of the beast, because the authority over you is going to tell you to take the mark of the
take
beast.
that.
So are you going to obey the authority?
And where is your line in the sand?
And there
At
always
which-
is a line in the sand.
Yeah.
And often, and that's been my problem with organised religion. It's I'm freedom religion. I think we are. It's this is
Spiritual?
church, and
Yes.
and it draws in people, and we talk God and we talk whatever, but it's bringing that freedom to each other. But when we're in the systems, I couldn't sit with you because you're Jehovah Witness, and you're not, but
Yeah.
if you were Jehovah Witness, and
Yeah.
I was a Christian pastor,
Yeah.
and so it would become a case of, and I get messages come through, and we probably will from
Yeah.
a lot of Jehovah Witness people. You need to go to their website, and it's no different to the government in that. And so I love how you
It's the
said you
same
broke free of
structure.
that. You
Yes.
broke free of the structure for
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. I believe so. Yeah. It is the same structure.
It's
And,
hardwired into you, freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And going through, obviously I went through at an early age, a little bit of counselling and whatnot, which is, I would always recommend if you've gone through something like that. But it's, I've been told many times that it's such a massive thing to be breaking
step
away
out of religion.
from an indoctrination,
Yes.
so powerful, especially one that you're born into,
Yeah.
brought up, that the worldly,
born in
being
the
part of
pews.
the world is, yes, you're sinning, and there's so much judgment associated with what you're talking about, the structure of the church.
It's funny, I got into a comment run on Facebook recently with somebody that was talking about sin.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go there because it fits with government.
Yeah,
So, Jehovah Witness, Christian, Catholic, whatever they are, they have a set of rules. They interpret the Bible, they want to interpret it, and then they shove those rules and say, you've got to look like this.
yeah,
And then it's death.
Yeah.
It's no different to the government saying, well, we know better than you. It's very self-righteous, I think.
Yeah.
We know better than you, and you'll do as we say,
yeah.
or else.
It's
We're
exactly
taking your
what's
freedom.
going on now.
We are coercing you. And if you don't follow our rules, you grew up in this, you'll know.
Yeah.
All of religion is this to a certain extent. No, it's there. It's just how they enforce it. If you don't follow our
You need
rules,
to stay in the pigeonhole.
we're going to coerce you,
Parameters.
we're going to hammer you, we're going to ostracize you, we're going to put you out as the black sheep, as you said you were the
Yeah.
black sheep.
Yeah,
When in actual fact, I think, the black sheep are the ones where God is.
yeah,
And I'm not saying black sheep as in, okay, we go out and we disrespect life and we trash everybody and everything.
Yeah.
I think the black sheep are the ones like yourself, which is actually the seedbed for freedom.
yeah,
I was the same. I could never fit with the system that I was in.
yeah,
I walked out of many meetings and things, and they'd always hammer me for it. And I was like, I'd say, well, if you're going to do that crap, I'm not going to stay in it.
no,
You're my leader. You're supposed to be my leader. You're supposed to be respecting everybody here.
exactly. I'll go one step further. I just think if you want to look at it from a biblical or, scriptural standpoint,
Yeah.
I feel that, God put us here with our minds, to think for ourselves, not to be part of that kind of structural.
It's that, I use the analogy, it's spiritual romance from God, not
Yeah.
between a man and a woman or
Yeah.
anything. It's our
Yeah, we've
Creator
talked about
saying,
this before.
our Creator saying, you're never going to fit because
Yeah.
you're unique,
Yeah.
you're special. That's a threat to every system. But it also brings up what we talked about in the car a little bit with, okay, is this the mark of the beast? Is this going to get worse? And what is the answer if it does? Because if we were saying, wouldn't we, if it goes to a mark of the beast, which I mean, it is lining up for that,
Yeah.
then things are not really going to get necessarily better.
Yeah.
But there's always and it's a biblical thing, there's always a remnant, meaning there's always a group of people that don't conform. And if you look in the Bible and history, that's always where God is.
Yeah.
God's never in the mainstream.
Yeah.
The mainstream's always wrong. He's always in what we call the remnant. The ones that are saying, like yourself, the black sheep, we can call it that, that are saying, hang on a minute, this doesn't sit good with me.
No.
I think that's our answer.
Yeah, I also think that, we spoke about it in the car, but the masses waking up, they really are. And I think it comes down to, we talked about this, it really comes down to, it's just like business in a way. I know it's a completely different story. It's life or death, really, when you look at it, what's going on now. But it's how we represent the whole story of the freedom movement, because if we're wanting to we need people. We need the masses to wake up. And, within a year, this last year, I've seen enormous amounts of people waking up even around me that weren't otherwise.
Yeah.
But, it's about waking them up so that we have the masses, so we're all on the same team. And if we're not representing ourselves in such a way that's going to be, attractive to join that or to find out more information, it's not going to help people wake up. We need to actually see how we're speaking to people on social media, how are we trying to wake people up? If we're bitching and going and back and forth with people on the internet, it's really not going to help the cause.
I understand why people do it, because we get frustrated and we have a voice. We feel like we're screaming at a wall. Nobody's listening.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So it is very easy to
catch more bees with honey, though.
You do.
It's how you do it.
And people get offended. We get offended.
Yeah.
And I've had it at times. I'm sure you have. And we end up saying things that we regretted saying.
Yeah.
But I'm 100% behind you. I think it's time, and people are, but to transitioning into being classy about it.
Absolutely.
Because people will always listen. If we take the high ground.
I think that's exactly right. What you just said there. You got to take the high ground.
There's two wrongs don't make a right, do they?
No, and that's part of what's happening with people when they do wake up anyway. And I've noticed that with myself. You're sort of becoming more spiritually evolved and changing as a person when you're seeing what's going on.
Not in the offence of it so much.
Yeah, so I think that does naturally change you anyway if you can lift your vibration. Yeah. It's all about frequencies and vibration, and if you can lift that up, that's when we're going to be attracting more people to wake up.
And that, jumping back a subject, is church.
The real church.
The real church.
Yeah.
People
not necessarily the one that people feel the need to go to on Sunday.
Now, I know.
Never floats your boat. But.
Yeah. and I know a lot of people many people that may watch this is screaming, and I know coming from the Christian church, people will be like, if you don't confess your sins before Jesus, you're not forgiven. And I'm like, they make an industry of that. And I think what you're saying, again, it's be classy about it. Everybody knows they've got a problem. Everybody knows that when we've fallen short in many ways in life, right? Yeah. You don't need me to come along, poke you in the eye and say, hey, but we know. And when it's time, when it's time for people to want freedom, it's a progression. That's right.
Yeah, and the confession.
Oh, and confession.
The confession part of it should be between you and God anyway. If that's where you are in your belief system, it shouldn't be about the need to confess it to somebody else in a box. No. Look, we are expressing our opinion. Well, I am at the moment, particularly, and at the end of the day, that's part of what makes you have an understanding of the other side, and it is talking, Yeah,
but I will say, because I know you well enough to say, I think you would agree.
Yeah.
Confession is not, when it's coming out of our right heart, out of a freedom spirit, there's
not an obligation.
Yeah, you will confess to somebody something because you're not going to be condemned.
Yes. They're
going to look at you and say, you know what? Looking to ourselves lest we fall down. We're looking and saying, you know what? Yeah, I hear where you're coming from, and because there is power in confessing. Sometimes when we say things like, "I've got too caught up in something," we have to talk it out.
Yeah.
And talking it out, but to go at a certain time.
Happens.
It is.
That's one big thing I've noticed, especially in the last couple of years. You know, that is where the magic happens. In resolution, it's all in communication.
But that's the freedom movement, right?
That is.
The magic happens in that freedom when all of a sudden we realise and somebody turns up and says, I've been chasing my tail in this. I've been believing this, these lies, and now I'm free.
Yes.
And then people aren't going, yeah, you idiot. Yeah, I always knew you were a loser. No, but it's like they're coming and saying, welcome to the party.
Yeah, exactly how I felt. It's in line with how I felt when the day I walked into Epic. The first night I drove in and the second time I walked in. My goodness, I have never, and I'm in the entertainment industry, so I do know what the stage high is like. It's quite amazing. It's quite addictive. But that feeling that night walking into Epic and driving into Epic with everybody who had like-minded goals and open hearts.
Give a picture of that. So Epic was this.
Incredible.
It's a showground. So in America, what would we call that? And for the Americans, it would be a. They don't have showgrounds, do they?
Well, I guess I went to, in 2019, I was back in Dallas, Texas, and the Texas Fair, County Fair.
There you go, County Fair. Yeah, they have those.
Very much the same sort of ground that we ended up taking over. thousands of people. And I know on the night before the protest, it was something like 3 hours to drive a mile. Yes. It was
and
incredible.
they were lined up out, they jammed the city that we were in, and it just, and people were just people were lined up all on the roads and just cheering each other and clapping, and the buses, and people were hanging out the windows. And,
it was just incredible, the welcome that you got every time. Just driving in, the welcome from everybody.
There was always a heap of people at the gate, wasn't it?
The whole lane, all the way to the end of the park, was filled with people clapping, cheering, high-fiving.
And then they kept opening up more space that wasn't even theirs, I think. So people are just packing in, and there was nowhere to camp, but nobody cared. You camp here with us, and it was
honestly,
incredible.
It was you couldn't get a more diverse mix of people, of Australians. Like, it was just everybody.
And it freaked out the authorities.
It should have.
Freaked it out.
It really should have, because we were there, you know, we had a point to get across, so I'm glad it freaked them out.
You know what I likened that to on the day was the difference of what we just talked, religion and freedom.
Yeah.
So the government really is religious in what it does. It's a religion of control.
The structure, the control.
Yeah. So and when you've come out of that, like we've just talked about, you know. So I think they sat back as the leaders, the priests, so to speak, of the people, and went, we're losing control. These people have become free, and they're
strength in numbers.
And they're just loving each other and giving people money and haircuts, and it was incredible, and it was just getting more, and thousands were coming from around Australia constantly, every day more were coming in.
Yeah.
And they freaked out because they didn't have control of it.
That's right, and that's what George Orwell's book is all about, and that's what he talks about, how the authorities are scared of love because love conquers all evil. And I've just recently finally read that book. And then I ended up watching the film because I wanted to see.
It's kind of a dark movie, though.
It is very dark, and I felt quite morbid afterwards, but I'm still glad I watched it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I read it because it was a little bit different too. But, you know, it's that whole thing of love. And that's what I felt in Epic. Like, it was the most incredible. I can only liken it to, but with GST on top. I can only liken it to, you know, a rock concert. When everyone's there for the one cause, the one person, the one band, or whatever it is.
The community, the freedom.
But for this, it was something, you know, important.
You know, one of the stories that I had was there was a guy, I forget his name, I've got his number in my phone on me, and he might have even been with us, I don't know, but somebody was, but this guy came, he had tattoos all over his head, and he had gay written right here, a tattoo, and he comes in a mohawk, rough looking guy, and we come walking over, and he comes up to the women, and he's like, hello. At least he was hugging the women, right? You know, and he's hugging the women, and I'm looking at this guy going, now my religious part was still there, and I'm looking going, oh boy, it was this guy.
Yeah.
Him and I hit it off later. He was the hairdresser. He was giving free haircuts.
Yes.
And I happened to walk across there with one of the guys, and he was cutting someone's hair in the chair.
Yeah.
And the guy whose hair was getting cut in the chair, we started talking to his wife that was standing there, me and the other guy. She starts crying about freedom and the things they were seeing and feeling, and we were talking about the spiritual movement of that.
Yeah.
And the man in the chair starts crying, that's getting a haircut. The hairdresser, who's got, the big gay written across his head,
Yeah.
he's crying, and then he puts his tools down, he starts talking about, and guess what his story was? Religious.
Yeah.
He was in religion, and inside he
Isn't
said...
it funny? I've heard that so much with so many people
Yeah.
that are...
But he said, I was in there, he said, I felt like I was supposed to go and get gay tattooed in big letters across my forehead. And you can imagine how that went down with his church. Right? So, and he definitely, he wasn't really gay. He just loved everybody.
Yeah.
He loved men.
Yeah.
But he didn't love men in a gay way. He just loved men.
Yeah.
I mean, but what it did is it got him thrown out of the church.
Yeah, of course it did.
And then and this guy was the sweetest spirit. In fact, he was sleeping in a tiny little 2-door car.
Yeah.
And he was sleeping in the
so
front of the seat.
Did.
And he came from like Adelaide, which was like 9 hours, 11 hours, probably 11 hours drive.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's not sure he was going to get back. And so I remember talking to him, and I said, I arranged for one of the local guys I know to service his car. So the next one of those days, we brought him over, he got his car serviced. I think I took him out for coffee or lunch or something while he'd get his car serviced, and just chatted with him and had a brilliant, outstanding guy. I wish I could remember his name. I've got it in my phone, but it just, and that was that. And you realise that it didn't matter what people looked like, it didn't matter what people were saying.
Representation of what Epic was like. I've not experienced anything like that really ever.
I went to a church. I don't go to organised church.
Yeah.
I stepped out of that, right? So, but I went to a friend's church that was a big one in Canberra, and asked them about, there's people there with no food, no blankets. There's people laying on the ground with no blankets. Canberra's cold, right? So
yes, even at that time of year.
Yeah. So they kicked me out. Kicked me out of the church. I asked them if we could park some cars in their car park to drive to the Epic with stuff that we had. And he said, somebody called our church and said, you're organising a protest rally to walk across Canberra with. I said, mate, it's going to take you 3 hours to walk from where you live across to there. Are you out of your mind? Well, I'm just... Anyway, I said, no. And anyway, long story short, it was kind of agreed that I should no longer attend. I wasn't attending his church anyway, but I was not welcome, because he said, we have people in our church that some want vax, some don't, some agree with freedom, some don't, and we can't take a position. And I said, no matter taking a position.
It's not about
I went to the Salvation Army to ask for blankets. The lady gave me hell. Those people, they should have them themselves. Why didn't they bring them? I said, well, the point is they didn't.
Well,
and then she actually turned and she was really nice. She went and
They were actually
helped.
one of the first people to, uphold the mandates,
It's
to
unbelievable.
work there, to volunteer, you had to have had it.
Across the road from Epic, there's a church organisation. I won't mention it.
Yeah.
But they have a massive big open area there. It's an old convent it's no longer Catholic. It's been sold to another organisation. I went over there when they were kicking, all the police ran everybody out of there. I went and knocked on the door because these people were traumatised. They were crying. They had nowhere to go. The police were just brutal.
Yeah.
So I said, look, can these people just come and park on your property to regroup,
Yeah.
help each other a little bit and decide where to go from here?
Yeah.
The lady that was said to me, I think it must have been the director's wife, looks at me and says, no, we've been told we're not allowed to have anything to do with those people. And I said, those people?
Such a
I said, they're people that
time
need...
in history.
Yeah, I said, these are people that need help. And you just...
And what is church and religion supposed to stand for when it comes to opening arms? Isn't that in the scriptures anyway?
So I was a little naughty, all right? I mean, I've got to make my confession here.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I said to the... She said to me, she said, oh, I'm so sorry. And I turned and I said, you're not sorry. I said, if you were sorry, you'd do something.
Yeah.
I said, you're hiding behind that and claiming Jesus.
Yeah.
And I turned and walked off and never looked back. And I was like, that's the attitude. But the churches, the organised churches, are completely aligned with the system of government, and persecuting the people of freedom.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it should be making everybody question organised religion.
It should.
As I always have.
It should, because it is about a relationship with your Creator.
Yeah. When people have questioned me leaving the church previously, I was only 16, as I said, in my 40s now. And they assume that it means I've lost my faith in God. Well, no, I'm not religious. Definitely not. And this is most certainly, the last couple of years have most certainly made me look towards the scripture, because we're most definitely fighting in a spiritual war. There's no doubt about what's going on right now.
100%.
But I never ever have lost my belief in God. But as we've said, it's not about me and anyone else but me and God, my relationship with God.
And that will take you to others of the same spirit, and that's church. And that's the answer to what's coming here, because they can't stop that.
Yeah.
So I'm not a big Bible scholar, and people might get...
Because I keep hearing, sorry to interject there, I keep hearing as well, it's ramping up, and it seems to be something that people are saying a lot. You're going to have to choose. It's a spiritual war, and eventually you're going to have to choose whether you
choose a side.
Following Satan, choose a side, or you're following God.
And we were talking in the car about this, how they are going to coerce. It's going to be, and again, I think they're going to overinflate our regular currency. So a loaf of bread's $5.
Yeah.
But if you take the digital currency, your loaf of bread's $1.
Yeah.
People are just going to naturally, they're already doing it in Australia, we were talking about that, they're digital IDs for businesses. Then it's going to become digital IDs for your employees, or you can't have a job.
Yeah.
Then it's going to be, and it's just, so slowly it's like a cancer, a slow death, they're taking it over. But I think what they're going to do...
It's happening very, very quickly, but it's happening tiny, tiny chomps at a time.
Yeah.
I think the thing is... And
who organises this stuff?
Well,
it's like one central World Economic Forum, right?
And it's very scary, the treaty, that we're dealing with Australia.
World Health Organisation.
Yeah, it's currently on pause. It's not going away.
No, it's not.
But they haven't signed it.
Yeah.
But like you said, things are in place. But I'm a strong believer. I think you're a little bit more sceptical. But I am a very strong believer that the masses are waking up. And that it's only us. No one is coming to save us. But I do believe that there's a lot of action going on also that we don't always know about.
I do believe that.
You do?
But I get to the point where I say...
But you also like to... have that rational thinking too, that logical...
Well, yeah, I'm a male.
Yeah.
But it gets me into trouble too much, right?
Optimistic view on everything, but yeah.
I mean, I do think we can make a difference. I do think we can change...
I think we can make all the difference.
We could change the time frame. Well, maybe it's in somebody else's lifetime, not mine. But no, I think it's coming, but I do think their plan B... Because these men pull the strings to the financial systems of the world.
And it's been going decades.
They are going to crash the economy eventually.
Yeah, that is imminent. It's obvious from everything that,
That's where I think our answer is, though. Then the answer becomes the community.
Yeah.
The Freedom Church. The Freedom people that are saying, hey, you think you're taking... We're not doing deals. I'm not going to come to you and say, hey, you give me some eggs and I'll cut your hair. That'll happen. But I think it's more saying... I was talking to someone the other day about this. They said if there's one piece of bread sort of thing, not that it may not get that bad, but one piece of bread and there's two of us, it'll be a case of, you know what, I ate yesterday and, you haven't eaten for a couple of days? You take it. And I think that's the spirit that it's in. It's not the spirit of me, take care of me.
Yeah.
And that's, I did a video this morning about, off-grid.
Yeah.
And I got a bit of blowback about it because I said, look, I think it's better to be off grid while you're in the grid.
Because in the matrix, but not of the matrix.
The Bible says be in the world, but not of the world.
Yeah, right. All these little analogies.
And I think that
definitely we've been looking at that sort of.
But the interesting thing about the market of the beast,
it's not an option for everybody.
It's not. And it's selfish because ultimately there's people here that you love, your kids, your uncles, your aunts, whoever, friends. That you love. So to just up and say, now I get it, we could make a safe haven. But a lot of people are saying, well, it's about numero uno. And now I've got to be, and so they want to take off somewhere. Not everybody can do that.
It's both, because when you look, I know, and when you look at it though, the whole analogy of put the mask on for yourself so you can help other people. That is essential. But it is about, yes, look after yourself, but you have to be community minded, and it comes into the whole thing with love, doesn't it, at the end of the day?
Love conquers all.
Yeah.
I think, having lived sort of off the grid but in the grid for the last 22 years, I think there's always a way. So even if somebody takes a mark and they become legalised system, they've still got a heart.
Yeah.
And so they see someone who's actually doing it different and struggling because they've refused to take that thing.
Yeah.
Hey, would you like a pizza? You know,
Yeah.
hey, I've never missed a meal doing that. And, and I think people's hearts are beautiful.
So in many ways, we're going to be going back to, you know, those good old days.
Then it comes down to, are we gutsy enough to walk it? I mean, the Bible talks about that,
the strength that people are having to conjure up in living through all of this. Yeah. If you'd have asked most of us 3 years ago, we would not have the strength that it was going to take. No, we would.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it is a gradual.
What do we now?
It is a gradual, and I think it's church. It's communal, because when I feel weak, you're strong. When you feel weak, I'm strong.
Yeah.
Or this guy over here is that lady over there, and as we come together in the community of it, what we thought was impossible, we suddenly stop and go, I can do that.
Yeah. Definitely.
You're doing that? I never thought of doing that. Yeah. Wow. And I think that's
stepping
where the answer lays.
And stepping and holding out your hand.
And the interesting thing about the Bible bit, I've got to say this because fits a lot with where we are. It talks about being a mark, the mark of a beast. It says this, and then the Antichrist, it says the number of the man is 666. But when we actually look at what it really says there, it says the number of mankind. And so it's saying when mankind moves as one, you're going to have a mark of a beast. This is the first time in our world we are seeing a global move by the World Economic Forum and globalists to bring about authoritarian control on a global scale. That's the first time I'm aware of that's happened. I mean, we've had it, like Rome did it and things, but there was always other parts that never did.
That's part of the cabal too. That is part of what their whole system relies on. Doing it in front of the people. Relying on the fact that their view is that they're, useless eaters and
tin hat, crazies.
Yeah, so they think that by doing that, they're avoiding their karma for what they're about to do. So long as they're telling us, they've been telling us for years, but we've been so indoctrinated into the system that we have all become a part of.
Gets back to the system you talked about when you were younger. I love how the Bible says, blessed are the children, so they shall inherit
the kingdom.
Or such belongs to the kingdom or something like that. Somebody will have the right wording of it. But the principle of what I'm saying is, what the Bible's saying is, children have an innocence that see things that others don't. You were 16 years old, but you grew up in a system looking at the injustices, looking at the control, looking at the things. And as a child, you went and said, this is not love and freedom to me.
That's right.
And when you got to an age where you could actually do something about it, you felt confident enough in who you were, you stepped out.
It always felt awkward. It just didn't feel like it wasn't sitting well with me. Even as a child, I knew. I tried to toe the line. I did the right thing. I was a good kid, but at the end of the day, it didn't feel right. And that's exactly what happened.
And I think that's a lot of people that are looking at government and some of the things that are happening. They're saying, I'm not against these people. I love these people, but what they're putting across here
And do you know what you're explaining? That whole analogy with the religion is exactly how I felt when COVID first hit, early 2020.
Yeah.
I felt the same way. I felt
same defilement, same demon.
I was petrified at first. I must admit, I didn't wake straight away. I was petrified of this thing that was going to kill everybody.
Yep.
And I was following the rules, and I actually was wearing the masks and making sure the family were wearing the masks and everything like that. It took, some people, a couple of friends to wake me up to what was going on. And then I remember actually sitting on the set, the Elvis movie that you were talking about before.
Yeah.
And because that happened early on in that year too, we had to come back to filming. But when we did come back to filming, this sort of really, we all have triggers along the way that wake us up, obviously.
The breadcrumbs.
Yeah. And this was a major bread loaf for me.
Yeah.
Filming that movie where the mask mandates were alive and well. And we would rehearse the scene. Everyone was dressed, had hair and makeup, costume done. Massive amounts of people filming this scene.
Yeah.
And we're all in this big room, really close proximity amongst each other.
Yeah.
Wearing masks for the filming of the rehearsals.
Yeah.
The bell would ring, the masks would come off, we'd have to hide them somewhere, under the table, under our legs, wherever we could find a spot, we had to hide the masks.
Yeah.
So hang on, I've been wearing my mask. You've been right next to me, but then I take them off and I'm spitting all over you and everybody's, spitting all over everybody.
The stupidity of it, the inconsistency of it.
It seems really logical and obvious right now, but for me that was a aha moment, because I'd been following the rules again, doing the right thing, following the system, in the system, and I'd been one of the rule followers. And then all of a sudden I was like, no, hang on a sec. This is stupid. It's not right.
So I hear you in that, but I'm going to build on that with you because, excuse me, a lot of women that have come into religion or out of religion, and I think a lot of the dynamic of women. I mean, obviously, women nowadays are getting empowered, so we won't go there. But
it's a whole.
What would you say to women? I mean, even this, the fact that we're doing this. We talked about doing this back a while back, and you just sort of said, "Well, I ain't ready yet."
Yeah.
And then you sort
I
of.
wanted to be sure I had something to bring to the table, and whilst I had my
encourage the women.
chat groups,
the women that are sitting there and saying, "Well, you know what? I'm just used to shutting up, sitting back," and. What would you say to that, to those sort of people? I mean, we talked about this, and I think it's
sword. This question. I'm going to have the feminists coming after me.
Well, I think maybe I'll expand a bit more for you to help you then, because I think that again, religion, it becomes up or down. I talk down to you or up to you. There's somebody's always above or below. I think in Holy Spirit Church, freedom movement, it's this. It's eye to eye. I'm no better than you. You're no better than me. We bring different things, and I complete you. You complete me.
To me, that's true feminism. So I always celebrate and embrace the idea of feminism, but it's not what is being pushed through this.
Oh, I know what it is. What we said earlier, not about feminism. It's not. If I'm screaming at people, I'm no better than the people I'm screaming at.
No, exactly.
So really what you're saying
How
is
are you
that
representing the whole
if I'm oppressing, as a woman, if you're rising up oppressing men because I have to have my voice, you're no different to the men who oppressed you.
That's exactly right.
So you're saying, but what we should be doing is saying, no, I have a right, I have dignity, I have an identity, I have a voice as a woman or a man.
Well,
it's equally important that it
there's
flows.
There's strengths in a woman that a man doesn't have, and it's vice versa. So that's a whole spiritual thing. If you're a spiritual person, not so much a religious person, it's the yin and yang, right? So we balance each other.
Absolutely.
So whilst I'm a traditional, always have been, even though I left the religion, I still am quite traditional in the sense that I think every woman should embrace their feminism.
Absolutely.
And in doing that, encourage the masculinity out of their man. You know what I mean?
I think
and
it
you
does.
can't do that if you're trying to be masculine. That demasculates them. You have to embrace your feminism.
I like that, but I also think we can go even deeper and say that the freedom movement is bringing a freedom into people's identity too, where all of a sudden they're finding a voice and they're saying, I have a voice.
I'll definitely go along with that.
And then I think also, then as they speak, others are saying, hey, I like that. Excuse me, but I think they're also, it's a case of starting to say, you know what, I love myself. I'm not in love with myself, but I love myself. And others that are around in the freedom movement love me and respect me, so I'm not a piece of dirt that the system's told me I am.
Yeah.
You need to shut up and do as you're told.
Yeah.
But you say, hang on a minute, I'm not being disrespectful.
Their tribe. I feel like that's what you're trying to say.
That's a good way to say it, isn't it?
People are really fun.
And we complete each other in the tribe.
Yeah, we're all seeing each other and finding each other in our tribe, like-minded. And it's so beautiful to see.
It really is. And I think
uniting.
I think that's the crux of this whole thing.
Yeah. And what do you think? That brings me to something else. What do you think about the freedom movement in general, like in terms of, obviously there's some leaders that in the movement in Australia. I'll just think about Australia for a minute. As I mentioned in the car, I follow all of them.
Yeah.
Because I like to see, I feel like not one ticks every box.
No.
And you need all the bits and pieces to come together for that jigsaw puzzle to create the picture.
Yeah.
What do you feel in terms of the freedom movement? Is there one saviour that's going to save us all?
No. I don't believe so.
No.
And I think Trump is a nationalist.
Yeah.
And I think everything else aside, we need nationalists to save, especially the US. He's not a globalist. That guy would do anything for the US.
But you did say what happens in the US quite often influences, it's a flow-on effect.
It does. And so I think as a nationalist, when he builds America, everybody gets it. But a lot of people think Trump is the answer that's going to stop all of this.
And Trump.
I personally...
I do believe it.
I think we'll see elements of it, but I think they've done so much damage. And the rot is so deeply ingrained in the globalist leaders around the world.
I'm glad you're not referring to them as elites.
No, they're not.
Because when I hear that, I really can't stand it.
No.
I mean, that's how they view themselves. It's quite narcissistic.
It really is.
In nature, isn't it?
I mean, I don't want to say a derogatory term for them because they're people. They don't deserve it. Well, they probably do deserve it. Wow. but they don't need to hear it from me. I'm not the guy to judge that. But, excuse me, I do think they are going to, many of them will fall.
I don't think they anticipated the unity of the people.
No.
And that's why I think...
They don't operate on that.
No, I think they thought it would be a lot based on human nature over the last few decades and the way that we have conformed and been coerced into absolutely every facet of our life and lifestyle. I think they thought it would be a lot easier. But the thing is, when you push people to that point, this is what's created a great awakening. Not the New World Order. It's an awakening.
You know a great example of that? So years ago I was in the system but sort of on the edge. And I mean, the Chinese church, right? They had a state-organised church that was state-approved and people could be in that church. If you wanted to buy a Bible, you had to go into a shop and register. You had to write your name that you bought a Bible. And you were going to get visited by secret police, basically. So you couldn't buy Bibles. But then the more the Chinese church would be persecuted. So if they found out that we were having a meeting at your house, they would come around, lock up the leaders, beat people up, that sort of stuff, right? So what happened was, you'd think that would stop it. It exploded. The largest church in the world took off because it was an organic movement where the system was saying, you will not, and they were saying, but we're free. And and I remember back then, I actually smuggled Bibles into China. Yeah. And it's quite a bit of a rush. I don't know what would happen if I got caught. Probably would just kick me out. But and I remember just putting him in different places and whatever. They said you could take him to the underground church. I don't want to do that because if I do that and someone got caught, I'd feel too bad. But my point is, the freedom spirit was alive. Yeah. I know another one.
People just need to be triggered in a certain way that crosses the line. Because obviously we've been living in a dark sleep for so long.
Oh, yeah.
But I think, slowly, and one thing leads to another.
And the persecution actually brings out freedom.
It does. It's strength.
It does. The more you're persecuted, suddenly you're taking it, and everyone's got a different breaking point. But eventually somebody stops and goes, hang on a minute. What gives this guy the right to tell me that?
That's exactly right. And I've had moments of, I'm at peace with a lot of things now. Yeah. But there are moments of anger, and I'm sure that people can relate to this.
I'm sure they can.
You have those moments of how dare they?
Yeah.
Those extreme moments. And you need those moments to fire you up. You can regain your composure, but you do need those moments because those moments
remind you.
They influence the strength that's needed to continue the fight.
But that's another good point, to not then feed on the offences. You don't go looking for the next guy that's, did you hear what he said? He said, really? I can't...
Well, it's the story of the wolf, sorry to interject.
No.
Which wolf do you feed? Which one's the one that's going to win? It's the one that you feed.
So I haven't heard that story, but it's a good one. And that's the point. I think many people, when they first come into the freedom, they feed the wrong wolf, the one that's going to eat them. Yeah. Instead of saying, you know what, it's taking my energy. When we fight the system needs that. They feed off of us.
That's right.
They need that power. They love being able to sit there and say they'll do as they're told.
That's right, but I'm noticing a change in the movement. In the last year since Epic, massive changes. And I'm really noticing that people are starting to take that tune. They're starting to notice their vibrations and noticing where their frequencies are. Yeah. And it's different.
Resonate.
They're putting their energies into bettering themselves, preparing themselves for what might be coming ahead. Lending the hand to the person next door. Those sorts of things. Like the energy's going into a different place, so it's less about the energy. It's more about feeding the wolf that's going to lead to self-preservation.
I'll say one thing as we start to wind it up, but I think one of my things I've noticed on the freedom movement, so the government persecutes, the church, but anybody persecutes, it brings freedom, as we've said. But another thing that people tend to do is it's like the self-betterment stuff, right?
Yeah.
If you need to better yourself.
Yeah.
I take a different angle on that, because if we all need to better ourselves, but if I'm working hard to be better at, I don't know, more polite, more this, more that, it's religion. Because think about it, when we were in the religious movements, all they did was told you need to change, you need to be better, you need to. Now, if we take that poison pill, and so now I get involved.
I am enough.
It's not what you do, it's who you are.
Yeah.
Your identity. And when people, because they don't love themselves, they try to do things.
Judgment in religion, isn't it? Yeah.
The one that gets me is
you're not enough.
Yeah.
Whereas God says we are.
That's right.
Yeah.
In fact, he says you're more than enough.
Yeah.
And so I think what happens is the New Age is a religion, but they have a lot of spiritual truths in there, but they take it into a religious context. And I believe
that's more where I sit.
But I believe when it's about self-betterment, it's really about control. So it's another system.
It's another system of coercion and control.
So if I get into saying, well, I'm going to meditate in the morning, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to read my Bible. Remember, we were at church when I was in there. We read your Bible every day and make sure you pray for.
But you're in control of that when you're doing that.
You are, but it's the works. You're still doing it. I think a better option is to come along and say, you know what, I'm going to empty. I'm going to empty and surrender. So the things that I've tried to do, all right, anger, for instance. Everyone I've known that had a problem with well, I'll give an example. It's a bit of a rough one maybe, but I'll give an example. There was a 23-year-old man in Canberra I talked to, and he was telling me one day, he said, I have a lot of one-night stands. And his religious mum was telling him, you're going to hell for that, and you're all right, and he was really on him. Right? Now, it's not a good thing, right? But I said to him, mate, you're free to do that, but God's not condemning you. He doesn't approve of it because it hurts you.
Yeah.
But I believe he sets you free, and in freedom, you're free. But I said, but once you're going to find out that's not freedom. And he came back to me a month, I said, and what I did is I diffused the right or wrong. Once it wasn't forbidden fruit anymore.
No.
All of a sudden, he came back to me like 2 weeks, a month later, I think it was about a month later. He says, I haven't been doing that.
Yeah.
He said, I just can't.
So I realised I had a choice and it's up to me.
Yeah, and he realised he was abusing himself first and foremost, and the people he was doing. He was just like, I've lost interest. But his mum couldn't get that. She was like disgusted with me. The religious mum was like, how dare you say that? You've given him permission to go and do it. And I said, no, he doesn't need my permission. He's doing it already.
Yeah.
But she couldn't get that. And I think that's the New Age. We get so into this New Age stuff, thinking it's going to do something for us instead of just being who we are.
Yeah.
And I think it should be more about releasing instead of about bringing.
Yeah, yeah.
And as I release the stuff that's in me, if there's pain, I release it. I say, why is this pain here? Pain just reveals to me I'm in control. So what am I in control of? And I let that go, which is a process. I find freedoms on the back of that.
It's a really, really good way of looking at things.
But I think the more we get into works, I'm trying. And it's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning, I can't think that. I have to not think that way. I don't want to think about that.
Yeah.
And you try hard. Yeah. That's misery. I think freedom comes by letting freedom be who we are.
No. Yeah, exactly.
So you got anything you want to say before we finish up?
Well, I just sort of wanted to touch on the what I brought up before with the freedom movement. And just, I think what is necessary is that everybody comes together. Shouldn't be, I noticed that, there's people talking this way, talking that way, or this person's going to say, I do have my definite opinions on, there's some really strong-minded people like Rossi and a few people that are actually making some waves, a couple of people are actually going in for positions in government.
In government,
I say pull out all the swords You know, it's something that's got to be attacked in every which way. And I do believe that the way that we are going to win the fight is by uniting, and that means in terms of people who are actually at the forefront in leading, because that's the way that that's their strength.
A lot of infighting there has been.
There was, and I think that the biggest thing that has to change is that people need to come together in the freedom movement, which I'm seeing now. I think a lot has changed in the last year, but I really am seeing that.
It's matured.
Yeah. I think people are realising that needs to evolve in order to move forward, and in order to win, it actually has to happen.
We're like kids in the freedom movement when we first come in, and kids, it's all about I'm hungry and I'm hungry now, and my way or no way.
Tantrums. The anger outbursts.
Then they sort of pass through the teens, and now they're coming into a bit of adult maturity, all of us, where we're starting to say, you know what, you're not a threat to me.
Yeah.
We can actually get on, even though we may not agree. We have a common cause of freedom. We did that at the American Embassy. Said people are here for vaccines, for masks, for all sorts of things, but the common core that even the police here want is freedom.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we can sort of see, maybe everybody, all of us, me included, we're all growing up a bit.
Yeah. So just reiterating that it is about, back to that wolf, it is about what you're feeding, what you're putting your energy into.
Yeah.
And it is the wolf that will win, the one that's being fed. So where are we putting our energy? And also that representation. I want to make sure that that's said in the right way, so I'm not misconstrued there. But the freedom movement must be represented in a certain way too, so that it is presented in a way that it'll wake other people up. We have to think about how we're actually
presenting ourselves
to people.
Well, we did that at the American Embassy. It was really a PR stunt to show, hey, we're normal people here hurting that want America to notice us.
Don't give them the ammunition that they're looking for. I mean, I love humour. I'm the first one to have a laugh at myself. But the memes, everything is funny, and I share them. I love that. That's great. And it's lightheartedness that we need as well. But when it comes to true representation and talking about it, we need to make sure that we're not looking crazy,
self-righteous and condescending,
and judgmental. Yeah, exactly. And that we're representing
it's not who we
from
are.
a point of view of bringing people into the light and the truth. Now, I'm not religious, but there's that scripture: "The truth will set you free."
Well, you should know the truth.
John 8:23 or something? Or is it 23?
You're better than I am.
It's 8:23.
I think it's just something about he who commits sin is a slave to sin.
Yeah.
But whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Is that the one?
No, it's something about it. I think we better clarify this. Someone will watch this and say it straight away. I think it's John 8:23. The truth will set you free.
You shall know the truth, and truth shall set you free. Yeah. You're right.
Because it really will. We're seeing the truth coming out now.
Freedom gives life. It doesn't suck life. I mean, truth. I mean, it gives life to you. It doesn't suck life.
The truth is coming into the light right now.
It is. Yeah.
And it will set us free.
I noticed that guy. We keep on going here, but I know that guy on Larry Fink from BlackRock.
Yeah.
I put a video up of him where he's sitting there and he's going like, well, he's the victim now, right?
Yeah,
he's like, I'm being misunderstood and I can't walk out in public now because people are mad at me and it's misinformation. Misinformation, you're the biggest Fink in the planet.
Absolutely.
Rat Fink, not Larry Fink.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. I'll have to edit that bit.
They're going downhill.
Sorry, Larry.
They're going downhill because they've been found out. And I think there are people in the media, there are journalists that are now coming out and doing little backflips, and it's happening quite suddenly. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are going, oh, good on them. Well, yes, so long as you're actually going to tell the absolute truth about the coercion that you went through, whether you were paid, whatever. I want to hear the absolute truth. Otherwise, not good on you, because if you're just there trying to save your neck from the noose, then that's self-preservation on their behalf. I want the real truth.
But you know what?
Who's pulling your puppet strings?
You know what?
Who's paying you?
Who's paying? But truth is, because I've just been through a whole journey in part of my life where a lot of lies were told, but some of truth was told, but it was told in the spirit of a lie. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we can say something that's truthful, but it's presented in a spirit of a lie, in a spirit of deception. And I think a lot of these people manipulating spirit, and that's what I think a lot of these people are doing they're telling truths in a spirit of manipulation, trying to save their own butts.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I see.
It's not about others.
Eyes are wide open.
Yeah,
It's funny
eyes
how you
wide
can
shut.
see that.
But we're eyes wide
Yes.
open, their eyes are wide shut.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.